House Democrats, what is going on here? And is there a division among the ranks? Who better to ask than the House Democrats' Chief Deputy Whip, Dan Kildee. Congressman, very good to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Neil.
What do you think of what Congresswoman Cortez is reportedly doing, sir? That is, keeping a list of colleagues of yours who vote with Republicans, I guess on anything.
Well, first of all, she doesn't need to keep the list. It's all a matter of public record. Anybody who wants to look at a vote record can just look at it. So I think that part of it's a bit overstated. I don't think it's productive, however, for Democrats in one district to interfere with the politics or the voting decisions or the choices that are made by Democrats coming from other districts. We have a diverse party. We've got lots of different points of view. I do think we've kind of got wrapped around our axle on this issue of the MTR, the motion to recommit. It's a procedural tool that both parties have used, and I think it's a bit overstated in terms of how this is playing out. But no, I don't think it's productive for us to interfere in one another's politics. We each come from separate districts. We have our own constituents. We are responsible to those constituents, and we ought to leave it at that.
Congressman, all of this occurs at a time when many equate the face of the Democratic Party today, fairly or not, with the Congresswoman from New York. Do you think that's a mistake?
I do. I don't think any one member of our caucus is the face of the party. I'm the face of the party for the people of the 5th District of Michigan. We all have interest in what other members say, but we have diverse views. But especially with these new members, I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding of the makeup of the new Democratic majority. There are some really progressive voices, and certainly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of those. But there are also lots of really interesting new members who come with a national security background, for example. Lots of military veterans comprise our new majority. So no one person can say they are the face of our party. We have a diverse party, lots of points of view, and I think that's fine.
You've been known as a fellow who tries to work with the other side, even the disparate sides within your own party, but that almost seems to be a cliche today. I don't mean to minimize or criticize you, sir, but I'm reminded of the grief that Joe Biden got for simply saying that the Vice President of the United States is a decent guy, and he had to dial that back. Do you worry about the tone getting worse, even within your own party?
I worry about it no matter where it comes from. If it comes from folks within my party, I'm certainly willing to talk to them and call them on it. And when it comes from the president or somebody else, I think we have to do the same. I think, one of the things that gets confused is that we can have really fundamental differences, policy differences, and we can have really spirited arguments. But I think where our country is getting off the rails is that the tone and the language that is used to describe one another is gone way beyond where it should. And, in the case of the vice president, or even in my own case, I'll give you an example. I have a really good personal relationship with Mark Meadows. Mark and I came to Congress together. He's a real conservative guy. He's a strong ally and friend of the president's. He and I disagree on almost everything, but we're friends, and we can talk to one another. And I think that says something. The tone that we set has as much to do with our ability to work together when we do agree than it does to argue with one another when we disagree. And I think what we lose is the ability to work together when maybe there's a policy eclipse and we just happen to be on the same side of an issue. If we throw one another under the bus every 5 minutes, the ability to come together around something like infrastructure is going to be lost. And the American people are the losers in that case. So, I do think we all need to dial it back, on our side, on their side. I think the president, unfortunately, sets a large a part of the tone here, and I think we have to hold him responsible for that. But nobody gets a pass because we start matching the tone of Donald Trump. I think that's a mistake.
Now, I talked to a Democratic colleague of yours off air, sir, who was saying about Congresswoman Cortez that she should be primaried herself, that she's wrecking the party, destroying its chances. What did you think of that?
See, I think it works both ways. I don't think we should be interfering with one another's politics. The people who elected us get to make those choices. And when Democrats, or for that matter, Republicans, start reaching into other states, into one another's districts, and try to dictate to the voters of a district that they don't represent who should represent them, I think that's an overreach. I'm going to let the people of the district that she represents make that choice. If somebody wants to run against her, that's the system. But I don't think it's a good practice for us to get involved in those races at all.
Congressman Dan Kildee, very good seeing you again. Thank you for getting up on a Saturday to join us. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Neil.
House Democrats are prepared to go to court to get the tax returns of President Trump. A spokeswoman for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the House Ways and Means Committee is working with the IRS to get the returns. She says, quote, every day the American people and Congress learn more about President Trump's improprieties, from conflicts of interest to influence peddling, potential tax evasion, and violations of the Constitution. We will take all necessary steps, including litigation if necessary, to obtain them. Republican Congressman Andy Biggs firing right back.
They've been clamoring for his tax returns since the campaign, and now they want to expand the scope to include his family members, basically going all the way back to, I'm sure, what his grades looked like in elementary school. This is just harassment, naked harassment. That's what this is.
Joining me now is Beverly Hallberg. She's the president of District Media Group, and Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under President Obama. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
And Joel, you're going to go first. I want to ask you, is that the right move? Should House Democrats go to court if President Trump does not comply and submit his tax returns?
Oh, absolutely. And President Trump has already said he would release his tax returns, and he hasn't done it. And the question has to be asked, what is he hiding, and why does he not want to do what other presidential candidates for the past 4 decades have done? And right now, we're in the midst of 2 major controversies, especially since the Michael Cohen testimony. The first is, was he inflating the value of his properties? Is he a tax cheat? And then the second one is, what are his foreign entanglements? We don't know the answers to these. It's past time to have transparency. He asked for transparency in the past. I don't see why he doesn't do the same for himself.
Well, you know, the release of tax returns did not become commonplace for presidential candidates until Richard Nixon. And since Nixon, every candidate who won the presidential election released their tax returns up until President Trump. So is it harassment, as Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona is saying, or is it a legitimate request, Beverly?
Well, I don't think we should use Michael Cohen as a legitimate source on whether or not Donald Trump should release his tax records.
I did not, but I posed the question. I gave you some factual information. That is how I posed my question.
Well, I'm referring to what Joel was saying earlier, and when it comes to whether or not Trump is legally obligated to do so, he's not. Now, what I wish Democrats would do, because first of all, we do have the alleged Russian collusion, now there's alleged tax fraud. I actually think they should attack Trump in the good old-fashioned way, which is try to vote him out of office. So when it comes to the 2020 election, I think what would be better for Democrats is to put somebody up on the ticket who can actually beat him, instead of saying that any public official, even as high as the president, has no right to privacy at all.
Joel?
Well, it's not a right to privacy question. He wants to be our commander-in-chief. He wants to sign bills about our personal taxes, and this tax bill, this tax fraud, recently a lot of Americans are finding they're paying higher taxes than he promised. We are electing a person to be our public leader. They need to tell us who they are. We should not be wondering if a foreign government has leverage over them. We should not be wondering if they've cheated on taxes and cheated the American people out of legitimate revenue. And the fact that he's not answering the question, that he hasn't done what 4 decades of candidates have done, implies he's hiding something. Why doesn't he just clear the air? Why doesn't he just tell us what he has? What's to hide?
Well, here is what you do if there is any tax fraud. It actually goes through the IRS. There is an IRS audit to determine whether or not somebody has unlawful activity. That is the process that I would like to see moving forward if there is anything that Donald Trump has done. We don't know that he's done anything, and we have to ask ourselves, when it comes to public officials, do we then just say anyone who is an elected official, you have no rights to privacy at all? It is actually illegal for the IRS to actually put out anybody's personal tax information. But now we have a committee moving forward, not with any proof, but saying that they think that the president should have to put his personal information out there. And I think, once again, we should go back to the IRS as the one who determines that.
I want to play some sound, an exchange between Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Michael Cohen Thursday. We don't have this sound. This is when she was suggesting, by the way, that Mr. Trump committed insurance fraud. I'm sure you both saw that. Everybody was watching. And Beverly, do you have thoughts on when you saw that exchange at first?
Once again, whether it is this story or Russian collusion, I just want to know what the proof is. There is a process to determine whether or not the president has done anything. And one of the things I'm concerned about is, let's say we do get to the point where we see the tax records of the president. What if he hasn't done anything wrong, but then the narrative turns to he was a wealthy businessman, look how much money he's made. I actually think Democrats are going to turn this into a bashing on anyone who's wealthy in this country. We should still have rights in this country to privacy, even as president. And I think the Democrats want to use this to their own political advantage.
Joel, how much do Americans care about what Speaker Pelosi refers to as President Trump's improprieties, and how much do those alleged transgressions affect the president's ability to run the country?
Well, I think Americans care deeply about whether or not the people that they elect are representing them well, that they are honest, that they are transparent, and we aren't getting that. Tax returns are the best way to understand an individual's fitness for office in terms of their personal interests and their honesty. No, Beverly, wait, please. Let me finish. Public servants, it is legal, first and foremost.
It is legal for him not to.
It is legal for this Congress to get his tax returns. It is legitimate for the American people to know what President Trump's dealings are and have been. It's clear that he has misrepresented and lied about his engagement with the Moscow Trump Tower project. We don't know. Why doesn't he clear the air? Why is President Trump...
Wait, Beverly, let me jump in here.
You're literally interrupting each time I'm trying to communicate. Every instance where the president says something about what his personal business interests are, he could easily clear the air by doing what every other presidential candidate has done for the past 4 decades, and he refuses to do so. So why?
The reason why is his own personal prerogative. If it really came down to whether or not voters cared about this, they knew when he was running for office that he had no plans on releasing his tax record, and they voted for him anyway. They knew this back in the campaign. So to say that this is about American voters, well, if it really is, they already said, we don't care, we want him as president.
That's not accurate. The majority of voters actually were cast for Hillary Clinton. I'm not going to relitigate
There is the Electoral College.
There are many reasons why people vote, but Americans, if they had the full record on him like they did on Hillary Clinton, maybe they would have made a different choice.
Joel Rubin, I have to leave it there. Beverly Hallberg, thank you too.